I saw two kids drinking from a puddle in a road, a brown, dirty puddle on the road. And they said, luckily, it rained last night, and this puddle of water is just 100 meters away.
A man who grew up in the corporate world, doing all the corporate things, who eventually decided to throw his business acumen into getting water to millions in Africa.
He founded Project Maji.
Can we use solar power to instead of this physical effort? I challenged them, and yes, they said we can do that. I don't want some dude to be driving 2 years later on the same road I was and see those two kids drinking again because our solar pump had broken down. Sometimes technology and innovation is about taking stuff away, simplifying stuff. It's not about adding stuff. The reward I get from running Project Maji is seeing the smiles on people's faces at the end of the day. There are so many problems in the world that need solving and are not going to get solved without social entrepreneurs, I'll call them. That's the reality. We've got these fancy SDGs. By 2030, we're going to hit all when I don't think a single SDG is going to be hit by 2030. Water is not going to be hit by 2040, by 2050. We're nowhere close. And so many of the SDGs are the same. So we need people to step up and do some of this stuff. If we don't have water, okay, we die within a week.
Sunil, thank you so much for joining us.
Pleasure, Casey. Good to be here.
I suppose the first thing I'd like to do is take us back to the old beginning. Where did it start for you? What inspired you to start this project for Maji? The journey, what led you here, the electronics industry, to founding the whole raw Maji?
Okay, so I was born and brought up in the UK, 1969.
Which part?
London, North London. In fact, it's interesting. From the hospital I was born in, to the school I went to the university I went to my first job, I never left a 5-mile radius.
Really?
Very much North London. I'm an Arsenal fan. I'll put that out there early on. And I always thought London was going to be, is the center of the world. It's going to be my center of the world, and never thought I would leave. And we were in the UK because my dad had a electronics business, Spinatone, which he had started with his brother in 1958. And right when I was graduating from university, they divided the business.
Okay.
And they divided the business by geography. So my uncle and my cousin took, let's essentially say, Western Europe.
Right.
And we took Eastern Europe, India, and Africa.
Very good.
So suddenly, after I graduated a year later, all my imagination that I'm going to be working in the UK office for the family was out the window. And it was now there are these new, what I guess you could term frontier markets, to be new countries we'd have to look at. My brother at that time, he's older than me, he was running the India operation. And I went to Nigeria for 2 years, cut my teeth there straight out of university. I always say that was my MBA. But suddenly when I graduate, that's what's in front of me. The opening was a position in the Nigeria office.
Okay.
So that's where I ended up. It wasn't my dream. It wasn't where I want to go. It was a hard time. It was a hard time also because I made it a hard time.
Right.
This is a lesson I learned later on in life because I went with a bad attitude. I went with, I don't want to be here. This is not what I want to be doing.
Okay.
And here's a surprise. If you go somewhere thinking you're not going to enjoy it, you're not going to enjoy it.
Yeah.
So I had a fairly miserable 2 years from a personal perspective, but from a business learning perspective, it was fantastic.
Right.
I mean, to cut your teeth in a market like that was incredible.
Yeah.
I then came back to the UK, started a couple of ventures, sold a couple of them, and then in 93, 94, the Soviet Union collapsed, and we decided to open an office in Moscow. So I moved to Moscow at the age of 24.
Okay.
Which was another incredible experience.
Yeah.
The first 1 or 2 years was as hard an experience as I've ever had. Learning a language, opening a new business with no experience on the ground, no contacts on the ground, dealing with organized crime, mafia, and things like that. It was really quite incredible. Now at cocktail parties, I have great stories to tell over drinks, but it was hard. I also say we did well because it was the opportunity. I would say anybody who ended up in Russia between 1994 and 1998, if you had some goods, you made money. You didn't have to be that smart, actually. You just had to be there and maybe a bit brave, I
Yeah.
guess. So that was an amazing opportunity. And then we had a big financial crisis in 98 and everything went down and we stuck it out. And then started to really build our business up after the year 2000, I guess, in Russia, and built quite a strong brand and business there. And my kids were born in 1999 and 2001 while we were there.
Right.
But Moscow was a hard place to raise two small kids. So my wife and the kids moved. Well, we all moved to Dubai actually at that time. But I was then commuting for about 10 years because my business was still there.
And why, just out of curiosity, why Dubai and not back to London? Why?
So it was interesting. We could have gone back then. And in terms of like having kids and thinking of future schooling, the UK was kind of our natural destination. My parents lived there. My wife's parents lived there. So it was an option. But actually from Moscow, Dubai was a 5-hour flight, no time difference, lovely weather. So as I could commute to Moscow and do my work, then I thought, let's give it a go. And we visited Dubai a couple of times on holiday. So we knew it was a nice place. And from that perspective, also to start to oversee some of our operations in Africa, again, from Dubai was
Quick, like one stop, one
was very
one-
easy. Yeah, exactly. So I was commuting for a number of years. And in 2008, I took over the group CEO role for the family business, which meant I was then definitely spending more time in Africa.
Yeah.
And so it's moving on to 2014, when I was driving in Ghana on a dirt road. Yeah. When I saw two kids drinking from a puddle in a road, a brown, dirty puddle on the road. And I asked my driver, I said, and stop the car, I want to see what's going on here. And my driver was very nonchalant, he's a Ghanaian guy. It's like, yeah, they're just collecting water for their daily needs. And born and brought up in the UK, you turn a tap, that's where water comes
Take it for
from.
granted, yeah.
And this was the kind of thing that I'd read some articles on, seen a Nat Geo documentary. I'd never seen it up front. And I was intrigued. I got down from the car, I spoke to these kids and asked them, what are you guys doing? And let me tell you, this was a brown, dirty puddle of water that you wouldn't put your foot into. And these guys were playing in there, drinking from that water, quite happy, smiling.
Yeah.
And they said, we live about 100 meters up this hill. We're on our way for our 1-hour walk to collect water. And they said, luckily, it rained last night. And this puddle of water is just 100 meters away. And I just thought how could you consider that puddle of water lucky? So I wanted to learn more. I went up the hill, went to the community, spoke to the elders, spoke to the chief. Sure enough, found, yes, every day, many members of the community have to go collect water, an hour walk each way. It's mostly the women and the young girls who get tasked with this, by the way. So what I've learned subsequently is, providing water is a big avenue to gender empowerment,
Right.
as well. But people go and walk an hour each way to collect water.
But what made you go from seeing the little girls and finding out this to actually wanting to go and speak to a village leader or the elder? What made you, like, what was that like? Like, did you go to your driver, take him to the village leader? Did you already have, did you know of them, or was it like you felt, no, I need to know more about this?
It was the latter. I was just intrigued about this. If I have to be very honest about it, they said, they're 100 meters away. Had they said we've walked 3 kilometers, would I have gone 3 kilometers to go and see the village? I don't know.
Interesting. Yeah.
I can't tell you hand on heart. I would have, but it was nearby. So I did. And I'm so glad I did.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Because it was really one of those life-changing moments for me where I saw, there's so much serendipity in this whole thing. One, I saw the kids, 5 minutes later, they weren't going to be there.
Absolutely. Yeah.
The village was 100 meters away. Had it not been, maybe I wouldn't have gone. So I asked the elders, I said, so what is the solution? How can we help? And they showed me that they had a hand pump in the village. I thought, fantastic, there's a solution here. And they said, hang on, but the hand pump is broken. And that was the first time the word sustainability came to it, but I understood what it meant. Again, it's a word that gets thrown around all the time, but what does it actually mean? And again, as a family business, we've donated to many causes. Schools, clinics. If someone knocks on our door and says, "I'm building a clinic, will you donate?" Yeah, we'll look at it. We'll donate. And I think not only us, I think many organizations, innocently but somewhat naively, donate. Get a picture of the school that they contributed to or the clinic, and 10 years later, we'll be talking about, look at the school that I donated to. Without thinking, is it still running? Because you can build a school, but then you've got to run a school.
Yeah.
And they're
Yeah.
two very different things. So you can build a hand pump in a village, then you've got to run a hand pump in a village. This hand pump had broken. So that's serendipity number 3. If it had been a working hand pump, I would have taken a completely different approach. It's only because I saw it was broken, I thought, oh, hang on, I've got to think beyond just giving something. So also, if you've seen hand pumps, there's a lot of physical effort that goes into pumping out water. And in fact, even when a village is given a hand pump, there can be an hour-long queue to collect the water because it's so slow and so laborious to do. So actually, I thought, look, let's give them a solution that's better than a hand pump, just from the physical effort and even, I'll say, dignity point of view.
Right.
And because of our electronics background, we had a couple of solar engineers on the team. So I actually asked them, I said, look, can we, abundant sunshine across Sub-Saharan Africa, can we use solar power instead of this physical effort? I challenged them, and yes, they said we can do that. And then I thought, okay, so we can build a better solution than a hand pump. Now, I don't want some dude to be driving 2 years later on the same road I was and see those 2 kids drinking again because our solar pump had broken down.
Right.
So what's the answer? And again, the chief said to me, he said, look, actually, even when we have the hand pump, we appoint a water committee who sort of sits by the hand pump. And every time someone comes to collect water, they pay a small coin that goes into a fund that, if it breaks down, that fund will then pay for repairs. Now, in this particular village, the hand pump had broken down so fast, within about 6 months. They never had enough time to collect enough money
Oh, wow.
to fix it. Now, studying this more, again, to be very blunt, even if they had enough time, who's to be sure the money would have been properly accounted for and there and available? And would there anyway have been enough? And if they had enough money, who did they pay to fix it? It's not just that simple. But I really liked the idea that community members were put in charge of it and that they were paying for water. And I thought, that's something we can do. Now, I don't care how much they pay. It could be a token amount, because if it breaks in future, we'll come and fix it. And if we collect $5, fine, we'll pay the rest, whatever it costs. But I liked that notion that they were putting some skin in the game, that there was some ownership and responsibility of it.
But what was your thought process when your team turned around and said, yeah, we can do this? Were you thinking, were you signing up like a year, 5 years, 10 years, 100 years, what was your thought process in the...
It's a very good question. At that initial moment, and again, I'm glad, it's a good question. I went into this, I went into it quite blind.
Yeah.
But I'm very glad I went into it blind.
Yeah.
And I'll come on to why that was. No one's asked me that question before, but it's a good one. So I like the mechanisms behind it. And I thought, okay, let's do this. Let's charge them for the water, and we'll commit to come back and fix it if something goes wrong. And between the time we had this idea and designed the system, is what we called a kiosk to build, and by the time we deployed it, which was March 22nd, 2015, so just over 10 years ago, I was involving myself more and more in learning about the water crisis and why people don't have water and things like that. So even while we were getting ready to deploy our very first kiosk, I realized that that's going to serve 1,000 people, which is great. The village is 1,000 people, is a small village. 800 million people in the world don't have access to water. So pardon the pun, but 1,000 people is barely a drop in the ocean.
Yeah.
And there's actually an argument to say that even if we built 1,000 and 1,000 and 1,000, once a month, more people are falling into water poverty than we're pulling out of it.
Right.
So I really thought, go big or go home, actually. And before we even opened the first kiosk, I said, we're going to go for 1 million people by 2025. Before we even built the first one.
Wow.
Just because I thought, yeah, it was go big or go.
If you're going to do it, yeah.
So, and back to your question, I didn't know what I was signing myself up for.
Yeah.
But I got so engrossed in this cause. It was just so emotional for me. Again, another serendipitous thing. Maybe it was just my age. I was 45. I had teenage kids, late teenage kids. I own my house. My mortgage is paid for. I was kind of ready for a different journey.
Yeah.
Let me say, and I was well positioned for that. So I thought, yeah, let's go for this. So we built the first kiosk. We turned on the tap March 22nd, 2015.
How was that process though? Was it quite simple to build the kiosk, or was there any challenges with that, or was it like?
So to build the first kiosk, I would say probably there weren't too many challenges because we'd found the community. They were ready to embrace us and accept what we wanted to give them. And actually we had a lot of, I'm going to say fun, intellectual fun, engineering fun in terms of designing it. And we designed it in our Dubai conference room. The software engineers came in. I have a couple of friends who actually worked in the humanitarian space, and they came and helped. And we were drawing this thing on the whiteboard, what it's going to look like. It cost about $50,000.
Okay.
And it was an engineering marvel, I would say. And it was fantastic. We loved making it. We built it, and not too many challenges, I would say. But after we deployed it, we realized we had completely over-engineered it.
Right.
And a big lesson we learned was, when you're designing for an African village, the one thing you don't do is design it in a Dubai conference room.
Right.
You design it in the village. But it was interesting because there's a notion called MVP, minimum viable product, for businesses. It's sort of, start designing a product, deploy it as fast as you can. Software engineers use this a lot. Deploy it as fast as you can, the most basic thing you can, and then start to iterate and build on it. And that's something I actually believe in, but we went the opposite way. We went with sort of maximum viable product and started to take things away. So for example, it was 10,000 liters capacity a day. We only needed to say half of that. So we stripped away half the capacity, too many solar panels. We put reverse osmosis filtration in there, ultraviolet filtration in there. The water actually was, the water's coming from 100 meters underground.
So it's pure.
It's very, very clean. So we actually didn't need all that fancy stuff that, apart from being expensive, was going to be a maintenance headache later on. We put batteries in there so that we could do 24/7 pumping and water delivery. Now, batteries are expensive. Batteries break down, and batteries are a theft risk. So we thought, well, how do we manage without batteries? We thought, why don't we just pump a little bit more water in the day? Instead of putting power into the battery, put power into the pump and pump more water, get rid of the batteries. So all these things we did to sort of slim down, and we've been doing that over the past 10 years, and we keep doing it. And this, I would say, because this takes me back to my consumer electronics background. You learn so much by observing customers.
Yeah.
And that's what we do in the field, is we just sit there and we just observe, how are people interacting with our kiosk? Are they coming? Aren't they coming? What volumes? Are they coming with multiple jerry cans or single ones? And we learn so much of that, and we're just constantly iterating every time we learn. So I always say that we've taken so much, and the two engineers who helped me on kiosk number 1, they're still with me 10 years later today. We've learned so much from that and iterated from that. That's been a crucial element to how we've built the project.
How did it feel, or were you there, or did you, as your eyes on ground, how did it feel when that first pump turned on? Was it a satisfaction? Was it like?
It was satisfaction doesn't do the word justice at
Really?
all. I mean, it's crazy because, the tap turned, and these kids who I saw drinking from a puddle for the first time in their lives had water flowing from a tap. And it was, I mean, it was life-changing for them. I don't know what other word to say, but it was beyond life-changing for them and the community. It was equally life-changing for me. Seeing that, everything until then was theoretical. It was an idea. It was a concept. It was, let's build serve 1 million people. Let's serve the first 1,000 first of all, right?
Yeah.
And we served the first 1,000, and it was just, I this is what I want to do.
That was it.
It was, what I love about, and that's how we built as well. What I love about what we did with Project Maji, even in that first day, and Maji means water in Swahili, to what we do today. Of course, it's nourishing my soul. It's so satisfying to see we're helping now hundreds of thousands of people. It's also a really great intellectually stimulating challenge for me. So, it fulfills that part of my soul as well.
Yes.
I guess. So it's just been a fantastic journey for me until now.
When the first pump was going in, were you looking at the pump kind of going, apart from obviously when this is unbelievable, this is fantastic, but were you looking going, well, this is one of X amount to go, this is the first drop in the ocean?
No, I don't think I thought of it that way. I put this sort of, at the time, seemed like a fantastical number up there, because it's partly my business mindset that's always sort of reach for the stars kind of target.
Yeah.
But my dad pointed out to me actually that I'd set this number of 1 million people, and we built number 1, and then we built number 2 and number 3. Yeah, and it took about a year to build the first 3.
Okay.
And each one serving 1,000 people, and I never did the maths. My dad pointed out to me, he said, you've taken a year to build 3. You've got to build 1,000 of these in 10 years. So what's the scale you've got to get to these? And the naivety of it was almost the beauty, because it was sort of, I don't know, but we're going to find a way.
Did that help you? Do you think that, as you were saying before, not knowing how long each one would take, not knowing how to get to 1 million people, not knowing the pros and cons, do you think that was kept
Yeah, I think so. I think it's really important for any business to put stretch targets out there. They've got to be I'm contradicting myself. They've got to be realistic, okay, but not easy.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, we could have said we'll build 100. Okay. And if we said we build 100, in 10 years we would have built 100. Okay. But we wouldn't have known, could we build 200 or 300 or 400 or 500?
right?
If we go for 1,000, do we reach 1,000? Maybe not. Okay. But if we reach 2, 3, 4, 500, we got there because we went for the 1,000.
Yeah.
And in 6 months' time, we reached the end of that 10-year period, and we would have crossed 500,000 people. So
Wow.
we never, and I struggle with this, honestly. I struggle with this because we said we'll reach 1 million, and we won't. We know the truth is we won't now, but we'll cross 500,000.
Yeah.
Is that success or failure? We brought 500,000 people out of water poverty. Every single day, 500,000 people are drinking clean water because of what we've done. That has to be a success by any means. We didn't hit the goal that I wanted to,
But
and that's immensely frustrating for me.
would your success also be seeing the first girls have water? Would anything after that, would that not have been a bonus? I know 1 million was the goal, but to see those first 2 little girls drink water, anything after that would be a bonus, or
That's a really good question. On one hand, I think yes, of course, like I say, even we served 1,000 and stopped at 1,000. That's we've helped 1,000 people.
Yeah.
Okay, that's great. So this is our 10th year, and we just finished a documentary on the 10 years. My daughter helps with our social media, so she was out with me, and we went back to our very early sites, and we were filming them, and it was really rewarding to go back to site number 1 and see those first kids who are now adults.
Yeah.
And it's a good point you raised, because we're on this mission to really scale up, really make a dramatic impact in hundreds of thousands or millions of lives. And I want to, because it needs to make a dent in the water crisis.
Yeah.
We have to hit those numbers. But sometimes it's important to stop and just appreciate what has been achieved, because I hate to say it this way, but we get so busy doing what we're doing that the people we're serving can become numbers.
Yeah.
Is it the 100,000, the 200,000, the 300,000, the 400,000?
Yeah.
But every one of them does make a difference. It's good to stop and reflect on that.
Do you ever, I was just going to say, for your own sake, do you ever think of how, like, I know you want to hit 1 million, 500,000, but do you ever look back and go, wow, pump number 1? Or do you go, like, was there every 5 pumps, did you have a moment, or every 10 pumps, or 100, like?
So I've been back to that first pump 4 times now over 10 years.
Okay.
And that's, and every single time it gets me, that's a real sense of satisfaction.
Yeah.
That's where it started. And what's really important for us is that pump is still running. We all our sites are online. We know their status live.
Okay.
What's happening, how much water's pumped through them, because we're responsible for the maintenance.
Yeah.
What's
the lifespan of a pump, though? When you were first designing those pumps with your guys, what was from a technology or a piece of equipment, what was the lifespan designed for it?
So we want to ambitiously think that our kiosks will last almost indefinitely.
Okay? Oh, wow.
And obviously they won't.
Yeah.
If you leave them alone, they won't, obviously. But the way that we look at it, because the economics of what we do, when we charge for water, and we now charge about 2 US cents for a 20-liter bucket of water.
Okay.
That is way below what the market is.
Yeah.
We're selling a humanitarian product.
Yeah.
So when we go into a community and we're about to build a kiosk, we have a dialogue with the community. We never go in and just say, here you go, guys. We're so great. We're granting you about water.
Yeah.
No, that's not the way this works. We go in, we engage with the community. We want to come in and help you. Do you need us? Do you want us? This is how we're going to work. We're going to build a kiosk. We're going to charge for water. Are you on board with that? Will some of your members of the community help us run that kiosk? This engagement part, it's actually the most difficult thing of what we do.
Yeah.
You asked me earlier on, was the building difficult? The building of the kiosks now, it's easy, but it's probably the easiest part of what we do.
Yeah.
That community engagement piece is definitely the hardest part we do. Because again, step number 1 of making sure these things last 10 years and beyond is making sure they're in the right communities. We need their engagement. So we get that engagement, number 1. We agree the price they're going to pay for water, so they're bought in. And typically we'll sell in a village of about 1,000 people, we'll sell about 3,000 liters a day at 2 cents for 20 liters. That gives us about $3 gross revenue per day. If you annualize that and take seasonality out, because during the rainy season, they don't buy water, they just collect rainwater.
Yeah, yeah.
So we get about $700 per site per year. Okay? Not a lot of money. That's why scale is so important.
Yeah.
25% of that goes to the caretaker. So we see less than $500, first of all.
Yeah.
We have to go in and we do an annual service of the site, just like you would with a car. So step number 1 to making sure these things last a long time is an annual service.
Yeah.
So we go and do an annual service, and that costs money. We have to budget for an unforeseen visit. Something might happen to the budget for that. And then we have to budget for, because it will happen, in 5 years, the pump will break.
Right.
In 7 years, the payment system will break. In 10 years, the solar panel breaks. Some of the structure needs repairing.
Mm.
So from that, whatever's left over, we have to build a buffer fund to pay for new pumps, new solar panels, new payment systems. If we get that right, these things should last forever, because we'll just keep on replacing broken parts. Now, we're 10 years in, site number 1 is still working, and all the others as well.
Amazing.
So we've crossed the 10-year threshold. Now, when I say they'll work indefinitely, I would like one day that the government can come in and actually take all these over and put in proper water sources, etc. So we shouldn't need to be there indefinitely. But we don't necessarily put a lifespan on these things and say 10 years it's gonna finish, and because these guys need water for their life.
Yeah. Was there any pushback from the government or anyone else? Or were they happy to kind of?
There's no pushback, but there's a lot of bureaucracy. There's a lot of red tape. And again, that part 1 I said about community engagement, it's also involving the local governments and making sure they know what we're doing. They know why we're coming, how we're going to operate. We have to comply with all local regulations. So every community we sign, it's a 3-way agreement: ourselves, the community, and the local government.
Okay.
So we engage with them insofar as, look, it should be their job to do this, but okay, for whatever reasons, in some of the Sub-Saharan African countries, they can't. So we do that work for them with their blessing, with their agreement. We work in accordance with the way that they require us to. They have set tariffs, and we always sell either at the tariffs or below the tariffs.
Okay.
Like I said, because we make, first and foremost, it's got to be affordable water.
Yeah.
For the community. So that's sort of how much we engage with the governments.
And how do you then pick the next site? Like how does one site? How do you go from site number 1? Where did you go, for example? Did you look over across the road and go, that's site number 2, or how did you start doing that?
Sure. So sites number 1, 2, 3 were literally us driving around.
Okay.
So site number 1, I told you we found because the kids were there.
Yeah.
And 2 and 3 were sort of villages nearby, because as we kept driving, we looked for other villages that we thought needed water. But then we realized we have to have a more scientific approach to this, and that's where we started to engage the local governments.
Right.
And so that's part of the local government's job as well, is to start to propose to us, look, these communities need water.
Yeah.
And we always say to them, look, we want to serve villages of 1,000 people or less. This is the other thing. So we're a non-profit, okay? And we're a non-profit, not because it was almost my dream to run a non-profit. Yeah, I wanted to make an impact, but I'm a business guy.
Yeah.
So in fact, when I started this, I thought, what is the way to make Project Maji into a business? And that's the first time I came across terms like impact investing, social enterprise. I've never heard these terms before. And I thought, actually, that's quite cool, because it means you can use business practices to achieve social aims. Now, profit is in a secondary issue, because I don't like these terms for profit and not for profit, because the term not for profit sort of implies you want to lose money.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. It goes against business.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But the term not for profit is a legal status, right? That's all it is.
Yeah.
Actually, every non-profit should strive to make a financial surplus in its operations. Now, the difference is, do you then dividend that out to shareholders, or do you keep that in the organization and use it, I don't know, for a rainy day or to create more impact?
Yeah.
So that's how I tend to look at stuff. Now, each of our kiosks costs about $25,000 to build.
So you got it down from 50 and now it's down to 25.
Yeah, because I mentioned we over-engineered that first one completely.
So now at the moment it's almost half from the initial product kiosk one.
Yeah. And there's been a lot of iterations in design, as I said. So we're really proud of what it is now. Because now we're actually also supplying other NGOs with our equipment.
Oh, brilliant.
Because I'll humbly say it's the best solution out there for villages of, let's say, under 3,000 people.
Right.
I haven't seen anything better than what we've got. Bigger than that, yes, there are other solutions out there, but no one's designed something like ours. If you look at it now, I say it's like a piece of IKEA furniture. It gets flat packed, delivered on site at reasonable cost.
Yeah.
It's assembled very easily and very quickly with standard parts that go in. But most critically, every time it's built with standardized quality. The difference with some of the other sort of water kiosks or sites that get built, they're built on site by local people with cement, etc.
Right.
Now, it's great to engage the local people in construction, which we also do. But if they have to build cement structures and you're scaling up at the rate we are, it's very hard to have quality control.
Right.
When they're making the cement mixture, are they using the right quantities, etc.? And in 3 years' time, it could collapse.
Yes.
Now, I hope it doesn't, but who knows? Our structures will always be consistent quality because of the metallic structure design that we made.
That's amazing. As you know, as we talked before, you come from a business background. When did you, was it kiosk 1 or kiosk 2? One you knew this was your mission, but then you knew it was going to work. Because I'm sure you must have had some doubts, like, well, wait a minute, it's working, but it might not work. Or you had 1 million people. When did you realize, yeah, this is doable?
I think probably somewhere around 2018, 19, when we expanded into Kenya. We still had very, very few sites. So a little bit of optimistic delusion in my head was probably quite good to keep me going. Because if I reflect back now, I should not have been that optimistic
Okay.
at that time. Rationally, we weren't going to get anywhere close.
Right.
But around end of 19, a couple of new people joined my team. Our current COO joined our team. She's been a dramatic support to me because I'm big picture, and that helped us to get to a certain level. And Vicky, she's a Dutch lady. She joined us end of 2019, and she really helped to make sure that the detailed operations on the ground started to happen to allow us to hit that kind of scale.
Yeah.
But also 2018, 2019, we started operating in Kenya. I was invited by somebody I knew. He'd seen what we were doing. He said, "Why don't you come to Kenya? And I'll support you on the ground to start." And that gave me an encouragement that, hang on, someone else has now seen what we're doing. And I think, this is worth scaling to another country.
Yeah.
So a few of these sort of little things happened that gave me a lot of encouragement.
And you felt comfortable enough going to another country, were you, I'm not finishing Uganda yet, or were you happy to go?
So it was from Ghana where we started. Again, if I look back, we should never have gone to Kenya when we went. We were. This is something I would preach to other nonprofits if I have to guide them.
Yeah.
Okay. But we did this. So in Ghana we started in that same geography where the first few sites were built, and then we were asked by World Vision, a big NGO. They wanted, I think we had about 7 or 8 sites at the time, and World Vision came to us. We did a pilot site for them. They loved it and said, "Okay, we want to commission 25 more from you."
Okay.
So it was more than doubling our scale, and they gave us a map of where they wanted to put these in Ghana, and it was dotted all over the country. We really shouldn't have done that, because the time to go and build each one and the transport costs, etc., was one we underquoted, not realizing how much it was going to actually cost us.
Right.
So again, the family business had to support some of that.
Yeah.
So the family. Also, I could never have done this without the family business behind us. We still sit in their offices in Ghana. So much of the back office support was there. I had such a head start than another NGO might have had if they were truly starting off just one person on their own. But so when we fell short a little bit, we had a bit of a backup on finance and support that we could do.
When that happened, though, did you have what's the protocol? Like when you realized you underquoted, was there a point where you kind of said, "Oh, I'll take it on the chin. It's my fault that I underquoted," or was there did you think about going and saying, "Listen, guys, sorry, I underquoted," or saying, "I underquoted, I can't do 25, but I can do 20 or 10."
Yeah, so we had those discussions, and they were basically, you've signed a contract.
Oh, really?
This is
You're in.
this is the budget.
You're in.
This is the budget we've got. I mean,
Okay.
look, and I think they were sympathetic to it, but it was sort of, you've committed. We've got no more budget to give you,
Right.
so you better do it.
Okay.
So, but what that did was it was a lesson that we really shouldn't be beholden to what donors tell us. We need to have the strength to say no sometimes.
Okay.
But it's look, I do get it. And that's why I said, if I talk to other people starting NGOs, I would tell them this, but I'm sympathetic that when you're small and you're struggling for business or donors, it's very easy to be principled, right? It's very hard to be practical and realistic, where you've got to say, no, I'm not going to take that. I like this World Vision contract more than doubled our size. The principal thing would have been say no, and Kenya was a similar thing. We weren't really ready in terms of the manpower we had, but it was exciting.
Yeah.
And someone had belief in us, and we're going to get funded for that. So I followed that. And for a couple of years, we started to build there, and it was painful in terms of just sort of time and headache and things like that.
More difficult in Ghana?
More difficult only because we didn't have people on the ground there.
Oh, okay. So it was just a new territory.
Yeah,
okay.
completely new territory. We had to learn the new territory, and all the guy did help us in terms of navigating red tape, etc. Execution on the ground was that's what we committed to.
Yeah.
And we did it, but it was a real drain on not financial resource but manpower resource, and we struggled. But then when we started to come out of COVID, it actually turned out to be a blessing because we had a footprint in Kenya and some new donors wanted to support us in Kenya. So it was actually an easy thing for us to expand on.
Even.
So that was fortuitous, it'd be nice to say that we had it planned, and because we had that, we could expand. We got a bit lucky, that one.
Listen, sometimes luck is all it takes. From your side, I think we talked about this now that you got the cost down, but what role does the technology play in Project Maji's mission to provide clean water in these underserved communities? Like the technology now, how has it changed from obviously a prototype is different, but have you seen a big leap in 10 years?
Yeah, so technology and innovation in the NGO space is something I love to talk about. Because I think, we live in this technologically romanticized world today. AI is coming everywhere, and self-driving cars and whatever. We always think about, what cool stuff can we add to something to make it technologically better? How can we innovate on that? So much of what we do in the space that we work in, look, every kiosk for us has to be really low cost to make every donor dollar count in terms of impact. We have to run these things, and they have to work in the harshest of environments. So we have to factor all of that in. So sometimes, as I told you, how we iterated from kiosk number 1 to kiosk number 300 all along the way. Sometimes technology and innovation is about taking stuff away.
Yeah.
Simplifying stuff. It's not about adding stuff. And so that's in fact a lot of what we had to do. And some of even the pumps originally we were buying, there were some very famous European pumps, Grundfos, and Lorenz, and really good pumps out there that do industrial stuff. And we were buying them in. But again, we took a lot of our knowledge of how we design product, produce in China, and started to make our own pumps that we knew were exactly fit for purpose. Much simpler than the fancy pumps we were buying before.
And cost effective
and reliable for the environment they were going to go into. You want to put those into big industrial systems, they're not going to work. I'll tell you that. But they're really, really good for what they're designed for. And again, this was something why it was so important. I had that team came with me from the family business, the engineering team. When I was going down this journey, and I was telling friends, what am I doing? When they're saying, you're spending all this time in Africa, what you're doing water, tell us about it. And I explained to them, how we're going to villages and we're building these water kiosks. Well, how are you building them? Where are you getting the technology from? Yeah, we go to China and we work with the factories and we get the stuff. Well, how are you working with China? Yeah, I've got people over there and we have product designers and what they were telling me, my friends, was you're explaining something that appears to be very, very complex, and I'm dismissing it as, yeah, we just do it. What I didn't realize, and what these friends told me, was you've got skills you've built over 30 years, which you take as natural,
Yeah.
right? And they really seem natural to me. I was flying to China 4 or 5 times a year, working with factories, working with product development. Easy.
Just like a nature, like just dealing
Yeah,
with them.
apparently it's not that easy.
Yeah.
Working with African governments, okay, importing stuff in, all we had to learn with Project Maji, actually, I say all, still a lot, was that last mile execution.
Right.
The product development, importing, storing, dealing with people on the ground, dealing with governments, we knew all of that. That last mile we had to learn. If I just wanted to do good, I could have gone and said, let me go and build schools in Nepal. That's a good cause, right? What do I know about schools? What do I know about Nepal? I'd be bringing no added value to that kind of a cause.
Yeah.
And here I was bringing tremendous, which I didn't. Again, I guess if you look back on it and write the story backwards, I guess I started Project Maji because I was in the position I was.
Yeah.
Like I said, I saw the hand pump. I knew I had solar engineers, and thought they can.
You saw a problem, I knew you could solve it.
Yeah, just because of the sort of tacit inherent skills that I had. And I guess that's the approach I take to the technology that's involved.
Yeah.
We have digital payment systems. And that's an important one when we're charging for water. I mentioned with the hand pump systems that we're working in our very early systems, it was literally someone with a logbook. Okay.
Wow.
You've come along and you've bought 4 buckets of water, and I take 8 cents from you, and then we would cross check that with the manual meter. Does it all add up?
Yeah.
And we'd collect the cash. But as we scaled up, we knew that wasn't going to be a way to go. So now we have digital payment systems where everything works with a plastic token. Which is like a wallet, rechargeable wallet. They touch it to the tap. It's got stored value. Water gets dispensed. The value on the token gets reduced. We now know who has collected water, how much they've collected. So we have a track of, we have all that data available.
Yeah.
Very critical. We use that critically just to know how efficiently is the kiosk working.
Can you manage the kiosk remotely? You can see any issues?
Yeah.
Or you have to be, so you don't have to be on site?
Oh, no, this is all. So we have Monday meeting calls with the whole team.
Wow.
And we go through all our sites, which ones are working, why aren't they working, go out and check that one because it looks like there's a problem.
Right.
We couldn't have scaled with the performance uptime that we have.
Yeah.
If we didn't have this technology available.
I remember you just said there a second ago, you were saying that your friends were like, oh, did you realize that you brought your skill set? Did you get any pushback from family or friends about it when you were starting this? Did some go, whoa, we're electronics, this is, or was everyone on board with it from the get-go?
I think from the electronics point of view, everyone was okay with it.
Yeah.
From the non-profit side, there was because what's this all for?
Yeah.
And till today, I get that pushback, and that's another thing which I really try and talk about. I lecture at some universities about this as well. About just going back to my point about non-profits, social enterprises. Look, I think there is a really important scope for, I'll use this term, social enterprises to play, or impact organizations. If I just start with where I think a lot of the problems have occurred, okay, let me caveat all of this by saying, look, I've grown up a capitalist. I've grown up being a beneficiary of a successful family business, and enjoyed a good life.
Yeah.
From a financial perspective. But I think capitalism has really gone to an extreme in the past 10, 20 plus years and caused so many of the ills that we have. And I mean, the notion of working harder and earning something more That's great. The notion of innovating and trying to find good solutions for things, fantastic. The notion of profit maximization, I have a big issue with.
Mate.
Okay. Not profit per se, but profit maximization. Profit maximization means what? It means you are obliged to maximize your revenue and minimize your cost. And US public companies are beholden to their shareholders to profit maximize.
Yeah.
If you're going to minimize cost, what does that? That means you've got to pay the lowest salaries possible. That means you've got to use the cheapest materials you can for whatever you do, which could be polluting materials. You've got to use the cheapest energy fuel sources that you can, which again can be, carbon emitting, etc. You are naturally causing harm to the greater society.
Yeah.
And then they'll put a token amount of money back in CSR to solve some notional problems for PR sake. Surely it's better to say, I want to make a profit. That's fine. Okay. Capital should get a return on it. That's also fine. But instead of making, look, and also let me caveat this by saying, okay, I'm not talking about small and medium businesses who need to survive. And, I'm talking about big conglomerates that have multi-billion-dollar revenues and profits, right? When you cross 1, 2, 10, 100 billion profit, okay, how much becomes enough?
Yeah.
And surely you could take a view, well, okay, look, let me pay higher salaries, okay? I'd say back there, Amazon is a great example of having a very poor reputation with its employees, exploiting its employees, paying the lowest salaries it can. There are companies like that which surely can afford to pay better salaries. And then I've traveled around the US, and it's really appalling. In San Francisco, you're just a few miles away from Silicon Valley, the richest hub in the world.
Yeah.
The amount of homeless people
It's unbelievable.
you see in San Francisco
Yeah.
is shocking.
Yeah.
It
doesn't. It's very hard to you just don't picture it with San Francisco.
Exactly.
You think of, Napa Valley and Silicon Valley, and you kind of go, oh, it's and then, but the homelessness is.
I was at a conference. I was staying downtown, and it was about a 20-minute walk to the conference center. So I thought, I'll walk every morning because nice day, nice walk. And every house had a homeless guy sleeping in the doorway.
Yeah.
It was just shocking to me. And so many problems can be solved. And then these guys also decide to maximize their profit, pay minimal taxes. Taxation is a whole other issue. Now, again, I would argue that if other companies were set up and people, investors and capital was ready to take a compromised return in return for tangible impact, there's an argument to say that we could move the financial system around that way. Now, I'm not saying all money should move from big investments down to charities or small return things, but all capital managers have an asset allocation portfolio. So they'll look at high risk, high return. You invest in crypto and invest in Silicon Valley startups, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
And then you move down the curve, lower risk, lower return. So blue chip stocks, property, bonds, and then you get down to this little area here where everyone has, maybe they're parking 1, 2, 5, 10% of their money, which is typically going into philanthropy. And I'm saying that impact organizations are going to have no luck taking that crypto money, right? Because that's high return and no one's going to give that away. But if you've got a pool of funds that is not returning zero, it's returning negative 100%. Charity is negative 100%.
Yeah.
And you can beat the market. Okay. I would argue you could get some, and this is where I think impact investment can come in. You could start putting money into well-performing organizations there. Now, maybe they make a profit, a small profit, even a moderate profit, or maybe they lose money. But they can pay back some of the money. Or indeed, they don't pay back any money, but they give very tangible returns. So we're very disciplined on every donor that we get. They get an online report. Every donor who comes to us who sponsors a full site or more gets access to a digital dashboard that they can see their site, how it's working, how much water is dispensed, etc. So they know for their money tangibly exactly what they've got.
Yeah.
That translates into a certain number of lives saved, a certain number of hours that women don't spend time walking for water, and that's hours that go towards contributing to that economy. How many hours young girls can go to school, which they previously weren't doing. Tangible outcomes that we measure, and we give back to the donor or our investor, let's say. That's a return on their investment. So I think there's a lot that can be done to discuss this space.
Yeah.
About what is capital seeking? Is it financial rewards or is it impact? And can there be a compromise on financial returns to support some organizations that can be run like businesses? If you come into our organization, you will see a business running in terms of our departments and functions and operations. That traditional notion of a charity or nonprofit that just gets money in and just sort of blows it on whatever the hell it is. I think that's probably unfair on a lot of organizations. But organizations need to have systems and processes to run and deliver value in terms of impact or product or whatever it's doing. And if that's an acceptable return for what it's doing, well, then capital should go to it and balance it out. But unfortunately, we struggle so much because people like to hear the nice stories, okay, but not enough people put their money behind it, actually, is the reality.
So as you said here, you've been leading this mission for 10 years. How has the conversation around water and sustainability evolved in that time? And today, with the current focus on SDG number 6.
So we very much focus on SDG 6, which is clean access to water for everyone. But we focus on a lot, we don't focus on, but we impact a lot of other SDGs as well. So a lot of the partners we have, water is the prime resource. Actually, it's not, one thing that frustrates me, it's not talked about enough. If we don't have water, okay, we die within a week.
Yeah.
Okay. Humanity goes. Okay. And this is just not on the agenda. We hear about the environment, clean air, climate change. Water is not talked about enough. So that's the core of what it does. And when you provide water to communities, as I mentioned earlier, you engage with gender empowerment. You engage with education as well, getting kids to school. You actually engage with zero poverty because it's demonstrated that once you bring water into a community, the economy of that community grows.
Right.
Okay. In fact, there's a study done. It was done in 2017, I think it was, that for every dollar invested in water, there is a 7x return on the community.
Wow.
Because of knock-on effects.
Yeah.
Now, going back to what I said earlier, if you offer an investor, you give me $1 and I'll give you a 7x return, they'll bite your hand off for it, right? And here we can actually guarantee with every dollar given to us, we give a 7x return. The difference is it doesn't go into the investor's pocket. It goes to the community.
Right.
But it is such a powerful dollar that's spent. So it has so many knock-on effects on all the SDGs.
Yeah.
So that conversation around water, I think, really has to be expanded.
Yeah. I think, as you said, it's amazing how people just kind of, they talk about air pollution and they talk about decarbonization and all, but like water is still the most basic necessity. Well, obviously air as well, but
I mean, for example, it was in 2018, 2019, Cape Town ran out of water, and it was the first major city to run out of water, and it was all over the news, and it was a big deal, and had to do a lot to do it because they'd overconsumed from the aquifers and things like that. And even today, you go to Cape Town now, all malls and shops and offices and elevators have how to conserve water, but they have water flowing again.
Yeah.
And that was a shock to their system. But speaking to people from Cape Town, also, it's amazing how quickly they're forgotten and they go back to normal. If we run out of water, there's no substitute. The amount of water we have today on the planet is the same amount of water that we had 4 billion years ago. No more water, no less water. It moves around, okay? And if we're polluting water and wasting water, and so water can get evaporated and can be in the ground, it can be in other things, in agriculture, in food, in clothes, etc. It takes time for it to get back into the system. So if we take it out and we dirty it all and pollute it and remove it from the places that it should be, There's no alternative for this.
Yeah.
Um,
I think the consequences are, there's I'm better thinking about, to be honest. Just probably, this actually leads on to, what advice would you give to companies or individuals who want to create meaningful, lasting impact, or want to start the journey that you started 10 years ago?
so I want to be very careful how I say this, because I think it's so important, as I mentioned, even from my start, to dream. Because you have to dream, you have to have passion, you have to be ready for a lot of really hard work. Okay, I mean, this is tiring work, and it's often thankless work. I often say the reward I get from running Project Maji is seeing the smiles on people's faces at the end of the day. When we've achieved something and you see the community smiling and laughing because they're drinking water, that's the reward that I want. But to get there is really, really hard.
Yeah.
So you need to be able to dream. You need to be tough. You need to be resilient. But you need to balance that idealism and pragmatism. And I'll just step back to what we're doing and then come back to this. So Project Maji is all about, it's about providing sustainable access to water to rural communities. That sustainable access is so critical. Not access, but sustainable access. Because from all the sites we've built, okay, if we were USAID funded and our funding dried up last month, what would have happened to all those sites that we built? If they aren't able to run independently of donations, then my opinion is we failed. Doesn't matter how many we built, because if they can't run independent of new donations, we failed.
Would you encourage someone to do it?
So yes, I would absolutely encourage someone to do it, as long as they are in a position and competent to do it.
Yeah.
So I'll put that as a strong caveat. But if someone says, look, I've thought about it and I'm ready and I've got a bit of funding and I want to do it, should I do it? Should I jump? If that's the question, then I'd say absolutely jump. Why? Because there are so many problems in the world that need solving and are not going to get solved without social entrepreneurs, I'll call them.
Yeah.
That's the reality. We've got these fancy SDGs. By 2030, we're going to hit all I don't think a single SDG is going to be hit by 2030.
Really?
And water is not going to be hit by 2040, by 2050. We're nowhere close.
Right.
And so many of the SDGs are the same. So sadly, we need people to step up and do some of this stuff. But also, going back to my comment about capitalism and profit maximization. Profit maximization, I think, doesn't only exist at a corporate level. I think we live in this world where people want more and more and more. And I think if we ask at a surface level to people, what do you define as success? Most people will talk about job position and money. And life has to be about more than that. That's simple. Of course, money is important. You've got to hit a certain threshold and a level where you're going to be comfortable. I understand that, of course. But we live in Dubai, and a city of great affluence. Okay, and I love living in Dubai. Okay, and again, I have no issue with people driving nice cars and owning yachts and having private jets. It's all fine. Okay. Where I find it a challenge is the motivation behind it.
Right.
Okay. If someone likes supercars, go ahead and buy all the supercars you want. Okay. But the moment people start buying them for status, and because I just need people to see that I've got these cars, or I bought a fancy yacht, or I'm flying on a private jet, and then you start to talk about where is the purpose in life? What is actually the drive? Where does satisfaction and happiness come into this? I think it's not that easy, okay? But I think people have to do some soul searching and understanding themselves. How much is enough? What is enough? When do I have that? Okay.
Yeah.
And then once I've got that, now what do I strive for in life? It's not more possessions, because the more possessions you have, you'll only want more after that and more after that and more after that.
Sure.
but what else can I look to do? And coming back to what you said, that's why if you can get involved in a project that really fills your soul, I've done it for 10 years and I'll do it for another 10 years and I'll keep doing it because it's just enriched my life so much.
Amazing. And finally, in one sentence, what does purpose mean to you?
Purpose means to me having something that fills your soul, fills your happiness, gives you direction and meaning in life. It's a long sentence, but it's
No, it's a good sentence. Do you feel it's not obviously that's not the last one, but I was going with Project Maji. Do you feel and maybe a strong thing, but it's a calling? Do you feel it's do you wish you started sooner? Do you wish you could do more, or are you happy how it's going?
I definitely think it's a calling. Okay. If people will say, go find your purpose, go find your calling, this found me. Okay. And I loved my job in my family business. Okay. I love product development, and I love marketing and all those kinds of stuff. And that's why I was able to take those skills with me. Would I have started it earlier? Do I wish I started earlier? Probably not, because I don't think I could have achieved what I achieved if I started it earlier. So I think it's just the right phase of my life. Everything came together. I had the bandwidth because my kids weren't so young, etc. All those things came together. So it was yes, it's my calling, but it's my calling at this stage of life.
I hit the right time. Sunil, thank you so much for your time.
Been a great pleasure.
Project Maji, very exciting, and I look forward to the future.
Thanks very much.
Thank you very much for your time.